Hi everyone, welcome back to the Hideaway. Hope you're all okay. I got this poster for Christmas from my two sons. It has the lyrics to a song from a movie we used to watch when they were toddlers, just the three of us. It really holds a lot of meaning to me. So in this video, I'm going to build a custom wood and resin frame for it. One solid piece, no mitres, no joins, river table style. Something really special for a song that's really special to me. So let's get into it. So the song is called When Can I See You Again from the movie Wreck-It Ralph. We used to watch it every Sunday night before they went back to their mum's house. They loved it, and so did I. I don't get to see my boys that often anymore, so having something like this to remind me of them is really important. So a wood and resin frame would really set it off and give it the presentation it deserves. I quickly sketched up an idea of the design and how I wanted it to look. I decided to make a solid frame, just for a bit of a challenge really. I could have made 4 pieces and used mitre joints, but I thought making a form would be fun and a bit different. So with this build, I decided to reverse engineer it a bit. I thought it may be easier to get the exact measurements of the form by actually cutting out the border that's going to sit in the frame first, with the poster sitting within the border. By doing it this way, I could calculate the form size more accurately. It may sound a bit backwards to some of you, but it made sense in my head. I picked up this card from my local craft shop, which was perfect for this border. I sat the poster on the card and marked out the dimensions I wanted and then started cutting. Once the border was all cut out, I placed the poster into the position I wanted, taped it with some masking tape, and that was the border done, and I could use that to determine my form size. So on to actually making the form. I started with the base. Just off camera, I placed the border onto this 18mm plywood that I'm using for the base and marked out where it needed to sit. From there, I needed to decide how wide I wanted the frame sides to be, and I went with about 7 centimeters. That gives me plenty of room to fit in the wooden pieces that would make up the actual frame, and for the resin that would flow alongside those pieces. Then it was over to the table saw to trim the base down to the exact size I need. Okay, so I've cut out what will be the base of the form here. I've not had any resin tape just yet because I wanted to draw and mark up where the poster and the border was going to go. And you might have noticed that I've put 2 sets of lines here, and that was intentional because I need to account for the rebate for the mount to sit in once everything has gone off and I'm ready to put it in. So probably a little easier to demonstrate with the poster and the mount itself. So that sits like that on the outside line, but the actual frame that I need to make needs to be bigger than that so that this can sit inside the frame once everything has kind of gone off. So all of this will be the frame itself. There'll be the outside walls, and then the internal walls need to be on the inside line here. So now I know where the internal walls need to be placed. So next thing for me to do is to put the resin tape on, and then I can start putting the walls on the outside. I'll do that first because that's a little easier, and then I'll put the internal walls on afterwards. I'll leave a link to the resin tape I've used here in the description below. I've used it before, it's pretty good stuff. I do add some release spray once the tape has been applied, but that isn't always necessary. I've not taped up the whole of the base, as not all of it will hold resin. I then use a filling knife or filling scraper to remove any bubbles. But you could use a bank card or something similar, that'd be just as good. Okay, so with the main part of the base all taped up and ready to go, now it's time for me to tape up the walls. And I've got this laminated chipboard here. I seem to have loads of this stuff lying around in my wood store, but it's perfect. It is already laminated, but I am going to tape it up just as a fail-safe. And I've got some kind of longish pieces here which will work for the outer walls. I haven't got enough to do all of it, so I've got some 18mm ply that I'll tape up and for the outer walls, for the rest of the outer walls. I do have some smaller pieces which are perfect for the inner walls, so I'll tape those up as well, and then once all that's taped up, then it'd be ready to attach all the walls to the main part of the base. The larger pieces to the outside, the smaller pieces will be pocket hole screwed to the inside of the base. So let's get taping these up. Once all the walls were taped up, I used my brad nailer to attach the outer walls. I probably should have screwed them in. It would have been easier to remove them later, but hindsight is 20/20, right? And as I alluded to earlier, I drilled pocket holes for the inner walls. I'm using my trusted Trend pocket hole jig here. I'll leave a link to this in the description as well. Before I secured the inner walls in place, I sealed the outer walls with silicone to prevent any resin leaks. I did this now so I had a bit more room to manoeuvre. I'm using a white silicone so I can easily see any areas that I've missed. Once the inner walls are in place, I then do the same on the other side. Putting the inner walls in on my own was a bit fiddly, so I got my beautiful wife to help hold them down whilst I screwed them in. I then add some release spray as a failsafe, hoping that it will make demoulding a bit easier later on. So with the form all ready, it's now time to get the pieces of wood all in place, as you can see here. These pieces of wood I got off Etsy, and they're sold as a set that's used for making river tables. They were a bit thicker than I'd liked, so what I've done is I've just sliced it kind of down the middle and then placed these kind of randomly around the form, and trying to get some kind of flow to it, as you can see I've tried to do here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to seal these pieces of wood with a small mix of resin, and then use that mix to then place them in here and wait for the resin to go off. So I'll have to come back to this tomorrow once that resin is set. So that will secure these in place, because what I don't want to happen is when I do the main pour for the pieces of wood to then start to lift. I don't want that. So it lengthens the amount of time I spend on the project, but I think it's well worth it. The other reason for sealing the wood is it does help reduce air bubbles or outgassing from escaping the wood into the curing resin. You can't always prevent it completely, but it certainly helps. Okay, onto the really fun stuff now, the resin pour. I'm using normal craft resin, when really I should have used deep pour resin, but it is what it is. I'm just used to using craft resin, and it was just a mistake. I start with a 600ml mix and add some olive green mica powder, then some green ink, and then some metallic gold ink to get the colour I want. I decided to put the form on the floor of the shop. It sat on an old kitchen worktop with some silicone mats underneath. I just didn't trust my skills of adding a silicone barrier to the form earlier on, so I got a bit worried about resin leaks going all over my workbench, so I took it down to the floor. I wanted to get some gold swirls into the frame for additional effect, but I wanted to see these from the front once it was done. This meant I had to try and force the gold ink down into the resin before it cured. It was a bit difficult to do blindly, but I gave it a go. Okay. So the first pour is done. It seems to be settling quite nicely. but I need to wait 24 hours for this to cure before I put in the second pour. So I'll come back tomorrow. Okay, here we are, the following day. Looks like it's cured pretty well. Maybe the odd blemish here or there, but there's going to be another mix going over the top of this, so I'm not overly fussed. I don't know why I didn't order deep pour, if I'm perfectly honest. I just ordered normal craft resin for this, but it doesn't really matter. I'll just apply 2 mixes and we should be okay. So I'll do the second mix now. Right, here we are, a few days later and a couple of pours later. It took a lot more resin than I thought it was going to take, but I think it's turned out pretty well. This is going to be the back, and I'm pretty pleased with it. I put in these kind of bits of gold and just swirled it around a little bit, but in fairness it's not going to be seen, so but I thought it'd be a nice touch. So now it's ready for demolding. It was at this point I realised that this thing was solid. Release spray or not, this was going to take a bit of muscle. Now, I'm no Dwayne Johnson, but I'm not a weak guy either. This thing took some effort to get out. So I changed tack. I went from the outside in, which is what I should have done from the start. And then what seemed like 5 years later, it was free. Okay. There we go. And there it was done. Out of the mould. It's not turned out too badly. There are a few little areas like this one here where there's been like a little air pocket when it was sitting in the form, but it was going to be difficult to kind of mitigate some of that stuff, I think. So I'm just going to do like a very small clear resin mix and just kind of skim over that, wait for it to go off, and I don't think it'd be too bad. But yeah, I think it's come out pretty well. So pretty happy. Okay, now it's time to route out the rebate. I've got a rebating bit in my DeWalt palm router all ready to go. I'm going to set it to the slowest speed setting on the router because I don't want the rebating bit to get too hot that might affect the resin. I'm also going to do this in really shallow passes, so I'm just going to do it bit at a time until I get to the depth that I want for the border to sit in. So let's do that now. So if anyone has any thoughts or ideas as to why my brain thought it was a good idea to do this routing without dust extraction, please do send them to me at number 10 What Were You Thinking Street, Idiotville, PO Box. That's going to take ages to clean up, which is just off Dimwit Junction of the M5. Well, at least it was outside. Whilst I was making my own snow in early spring, I thought I may as well put an edge profile on the inner and outer edges of the frame. I'm using a round nose router bit here to do just that. That's turned out pretty well. I think the depth is just about right. Enough for backing board, perspex and the border itself, so I'm pretty happy with that. There are a few chips in some places, just kind of here, but this is the back, so I'm not overly concerned about that too much. Right then, getting close to the finish now. We're on to sanding. I started with a pretty low grit on this one, 80 grit. That was intentional. There were a few blemishes I wanted to remove, and as I couldn't fit this through my thicknesser and I didn't trust my hand planer skills, I went with a low grit sandpaper to do the job. Once that was done, I then went through the grits: 120, 240, 400, 600, 1000, 2000, and the last few were wet sands. I don't normally go that high for resin projects, but I really wanted a smooth finish on this frame. With the sanding done, it was time to add some finish. First, the wooden elements of the frame. I added a couple of coats of Danish oil. It's a decent preservative and I like the way it makes the wood really pop. I wanted to add the Danish oil first, so that would seal the wood against the polish I added to the rest of the frame. I'm using Epoxy polish here. I'll leave a link in the description. It's the first time I've used a polish, but it went on pretty well, I have to say. I'm using a felt polishing pad to apply it, and that's velcroed onto my orbital sander. And then for a bit of extra shine, some feed and wax. It was never going to seep into the resin, obviously, but it does give it a nice shine.
The final thing to do on this project was to cut the clear acrylic sheet and the backing board. I'm using clear acrylic here instead of glass, it's just my preference, and I'm cutting this on the bandsaw. But the backing board was a bit too big, so cut that on the table saw instead. Once everything was cut to size, I put the acrylic sheet in first, then the poster and the border, then the backing board, and I secured everything in place with flexible frame tabs. I then added some frame D-rings, as I was going to use frame wire to hang this up. I drilled some shallow pilot holes for the screws just in case. I used heavy duty frame wire as the frame was relatively heavy, so I thought the thicker the better. I cut it to length and secure it in place with a decent knot and crimp tubes. So that's all for this video. It's been an emotional project to do, if I'm honest, considering what the frame was for and what the poster and the lyrics mean to me and what they represent. Anyway, I really hope you've enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think in the comments. I always love to read them. And if you haven't subscribed already, give that subscribe button a click. It's free and it really helps the channel. I'll leave it there for now for you to enjoy the final results, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.